Net Gain, networking, encouragement, and training. Brought to you by Jack of All People Trades, helping snow and landscape companies recruit, train, and retain the best employees. All right, welcome to Net Gain. This is Networking Encouragement Training. I'm your host, Evan Tashwire from Jack of All People Trades. We exist to help snow, landscape, and small businesses hire, train, and ultimately retain the best people to build those win-win workplaces. And here on Net Gain, I have some special guests today. So we have Aron Rodman from Extra Mile Snow in Wisconsin, and also Allison Madison from Wisconsin Saltwise. So we're going to be talking a lot about de-icing, smart salt usage, and efficiency. So Aron and Allison, Aron, then Allison, if you want to introduce yourselves real quick, just to the audience. I know, Aron, you've been on before, but just, tell them who you are.
Oh, well, I'm Aron with Extra Mile Snow Plowing. We're in West Bend, Wisconsin. Got an amazing plowing niche. We cover one city, so we do about a 5-mile radius, about 250 plus acres in there, 70 guys per storm, and only 6 the rest of the year. We're mostly snow only. Do a couple of odds and ends throughout the rest of the year, but takes us about that long to get everything fixed with the 6 of us from the winter, anyways. But had an awesome opportunity to start working with Wisconsin Saltwise several years back, and it changed our operating procedures dramatically, and it also changed our bottom line as well. So it was win-wins all over the place. Gave our team something to work on together. Financially, it's saved us tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 10 years. And green-wise, we've drastically, almost by 50%, reduced the amount of chlorides that we are contributing to the environment.
Awesome. That's great. We definitely want to dig more into that as we talk. Allison, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes. So I'm the program manager at Wisconsin Saltwise. I am based in Madison, Wisconsin, but works, across the state and work with both private contractors like Aron, as well as municipal Department of Public Works staff, school districts, universities, pretty much anybody who's doing, snow removal professionally. And our goal is to accelerate the adoption of those best practices for snow control.
100%. So, yeah, so we'll start off, Allison, talking about Wisconsin Saltwise. What is, just give a brief overview of the organization and really what your mission is.
So Wisconsin Saltwise started in kind of like the 20 teens with the city of Madison, Dane County, the water utility, the wastewater treatment plant. All of these municipal entities were acknowledging that we've got a problem here. It's not a unique to Madison problem, but the salt levels in our drinking water and the salt levels in our wastewater are both going up. And that means also the salt in our lakes is going up, the salt in our streams is going up. This is not sustainable. Like, what are we doing? And the idea was, let's try to get information out. Well, first, let's try to gain as much information as we can about the winter maintenance industry and ways that we can kind of learn and support the people that are doing that work and putting that salt down to try to kind of reevaluate, rethink how can we do this work without kind of the really high levels of salt that we've kind of grown accustomed to in recent decades. So a lot of the work that happens is training workshops, in-person trainings across the state. We do monthly webinars. So we bring in folks like Aron, other practitioners, some of the scientists that are looking at, the issues with what happens when your lake gets really salty, what critters aren't surviving anymore. So we kind of, work with all the different stakeholders and try to provide resources for those folks, whether it be the people doing the work themselves, whether it be the clients, the property managers, getting good content to them. And then, as I think we'll talk about a little later on, also getting the word out to legislators, because right now, without any sort of protection, of course, oversalting is usually seems like the simplest way to try to protect yourself, right, against that next lawsuit.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like you do a lot of good work. From the people side, I definitely heard a lot about collaboration because from what you talked about, it sounds like a lot of those people you bring together might have different goals. Obviously, those who are, about environmental protection, reducing chlorides in the water, they're worried about, environmental side. You have contractors you're bringing together. How, from a people side, were you really able to kind of bring together? Different people and find those win-wins. And then maybe after you talk, Aaron, if you want to chime in about how you were brought in and how those win-wins kind of work for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think so we're actually doing some strategic planning right now for the organization, and I'm the only staff person who runs this program and works on it. But we have a lot of people, obviously, like you said, from a lot of different kind of sectors participating, and in this early stages of strategic planning, we're seeing that people are saying one of the greatest strengths is that collaboration, the fact that we do bring people together. So a lot of times I feel like on the municipal side, different municipal public works staff, probably true, to some extent on the private side too. Like people can work in silos, and there's just so much to gain by bringing agencies together on the public side, bringing the public and the private together. And yes, there are sometimes different goals, right? Not all that different, right? I know most municipalities have budget constraints, and then that mirrors, on the private side, that a contractor obviously needs to make some money, right? Or you're not in business for very long. So recognizing that, yeah, we have some different, slightly different goals, but there's a lot that's shared there as well. And there's a lot of excitement. And I feel like when we bring people together and we start to identify some of those shared goals and find ways to support one another. So yeah, it's one of the things that makes, yeah, me love, just really love this job is connecting with the people. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Aaron, from your side, how did you kind of get connected with, Wisconsin Saltwise, and where have you seen that collaboration?
Yeah. Boy, initially, it's probably all of 10 years ago that we started with Saltwise, and honestly, I can't remember. It was an email, a flyer, something that came through, maybe through like the local UW system, or somehow I got an email advertising a, a program or class certificate type program, 1 day program in Madison 10 years ago. And a couple of the guys from our company went and came back really motivated and really charged up. And I was kind of the stick in the mud. They're telling me about how we're putting down more than twice the amount of salt that we need to, and it will work, with these different practices. And I didn't buy it. And they were really, really on my case about letting us try this. One of them had an R&D background. He used to run the R&D department for a plow manufacturer, and so he's really scientific minded, detail minded. Another one of the guys just really progressive and always just wants to try new things. And so this really got them going. And also ecological standpoint, all of us. Really, there's like really, really deeply caring about the environment. But then there's also just flat out looking at this giant stockpile of salt in our shed, and some years overflowing out into the yard because we need more storage area and we just have it tarped, and just consistently looking at that and saying, every last grain in here, millions of pounds, is going to end up in a storm sewer, in a river, in a detention pond, in the lawn. Like, this is all going somewhere, and we're a small fish. So they were able to convince me, like, hey, let's start trying this on some some not so consequential areas of parking lots and whatnot. And it worked. And then we were able to gain some ground and communicated with some other people who were doing it. The networking, even through Wisconsin Saltwise, has been really beneficial. Like 20 years ago, we paid like $10,000 more than we had as a company to bring in this consultant to help us out. And shortly after, I learned pretty quickly that I actually got more out of just going out to breakfast with some other guys who'd been in the industry with me longer and running some things by them. And so when I've gone to these Saltwise programs that they have, because we still do attend them and our new guys still go to them, we come across other companies, other municipalities, and we're able to, in the breaks and during the class a little bit, share some stories of who's doing what, not reinvent the wheel by learning what a new practice someone else does and what worked for them, what didn't, exchange some phone numbers, just like different areas, other networking we do as well through SIMA and other places as well. So it's really opened the doors to a lot of other companies who have the same interest as us, where we can, hey, this worked, hey, that didn't work, and and not have to reinvent the wheel. I like learning from other people's mistakes, but I also like learning from other people's successes as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it sounds like, your team's passion plus a little bit of testing was able to kind of help get you over the hump with, adopting this. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, because we had what you mentioned before. I should say me personally, because this falls under my lap with my hat in the company. I had and have the fear of litigation. I mean, every year we get $500,000 lawsuits filed against us because someone slips on a piece of ice the size of a pie plate 5 days after the last snowfall had even happened. So we had the general practice of just over applying to protect ourselves. But we really were able to learn some of the benefits and cost savings. I mean, like I said, in the last bunch of years, totaled hundreds of thousands of dollars in cost savings, which at some point I could get into for you if you want. But we tried on some more inconsequential areas. Okay, guys, let's try on the back half of this parking lot the new way, but don't even think of trying the new way where all these cars and the people are. I need to see this working frequently and in multiple temperatures for us. And it worked. And so each time we'd start, okay, well, now let's start doing it on this property. Then let's do it this whole route. And then there's supplemental things that go with it too. It isn't just as simple as, well, sometimes it is just as simple as use less salt. For a lot of it really is, but there's a very integrated approach to do it. Best practice, better scraping with active edge cutting edges, better timings with your plowing, better timings with your salting, the possibility of brine, but it can be done without brine as well. And so it really kind of revolutionized the way that we were servicing our properties. Our customers are thrilled. I honestly, we don't get negative feedback from our customers on this. We get positive feedback out of it. They don't feel like we're over applying, and like they all want bare pavement. They all want safety, but most of the time they don't like seeing so much sand on the parking, or salt. I'm sorry, not sand. So much salt on the parking lot that it looks like someone dumped salt shakers. I'm not thinking of a good analogy.
Yeah, I got you.
I mean, then you're just walking on white marbles all over the place. And people are starting to, I think on the property management side, the tide is turning, and the managers and owners are starting to see the infrastructure costs that salt is having on their infrastructure, eating away the grout in their tiles, rotting away door and bottom 6-8 inches of doorways that are just rotted and rusted away, or door thresholds, concrete eaten away. I'm sure Allison has them, but there's all kinds of statistics that show just, how many the infrastructure cost per ton of salt. I'm not sure, Allison. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there.
I can jump in there. Yeah. So 1 ton of salt does roughly $3,000 of damage to infrastructure. That's a statistic from a 2022 study that came out of the University of Minnesota. So yeah, it adds up. I mean, I just saw an article earlier this week about a parking collapse. Parking, I was fully garage, but it was like a parking floor kind of collapse. I saw these 2 vehicles in the photo. They like just fell down into the basement, and they did acknowledge that it was due to water infiltration and especially salt water in the winter. Right, so obviously that's that's real bad, but even the damages that Aron talked about are add up in the long run.
I think a big place where it adds up too, because you think, well, how could it be $3,000 per ton? Some of these parking lots that we're salting are $500,000 to repave. And so by shortening the life of that parking lot, even by, let's say, it was going to be a 30-year parking lot. Now it's a 20 to 25-year parking lot with the salt. You start adding the cost of ripping out and repaving a parking lot in 20 years instead of 30 years. And now that $3,000 per ton seems much more logical as well.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Oh, go ahead, Allison. Yeah.
I was just going to say, anecdotally, I've heard that Walmart has to replace their sliding glass doors twice as often in the snowbelt states. So,
I'm sure that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah, and I hope this is some things that can definitely educate people as far as, you know, property management. I think definitely because, like you said, a lot of these things aren't things when you're looking just at price on paper for a snow contract, in a kind of like you said, Allison, silo earlier. I think these are things to expand and put in that, expand the silo when you're thinking about it and expand the, mindset. So I hope property managers listening, which I hope to, really move forward with this. I really hope that more would listen and more would be open to this kind of education because I think it would help them not just to say, oh, the snow contractor is trying to sell us a higher bid contract, but it's like, no, this is a partner here that's really trying to help. Not just look at our winter, risk management or just removing the snow or just putting the icer down, but they're really looking out for the property as a whole. And they're able to actually, like you said, Aron, extend the life of that lot, extend the life of those doors. So I think I'm going to tie it back to the collaboration point earlier that you said, Allison, of bringing people together for that win-wins. One thing that I really believe is the smartest person in any room is the room itself, meaning the perspective of everybody that comes together. So I think when you bring those people together, whether it's the environmental, the municipal, managers, the snow contractors, the property managers, you can really find those win-wins that you have there and really get kind of break that silo. Because I think nothing can be more frustrating from a work perspective too. And this is why I think collaboration is important. And I've actually seen this mistake from owners in the industry in different places, and not just this industry, any industry, is somebody works on something in a silo. You have somebody work on something in a silo. They bring it to you. You start rolling it out and be like, okay, we're going to do this. And someone else in the organization who had a stake in that or has a perspective throws their hand up and be like, we can't do this. And here's why, whether it's IT, it's like, it's not going to work with our technology or, operations. Yeah, this is a great sales plan, but we're never going to cover this, whereas that collaboration at first, while some people I think may avoid it because it's like, oh, I don't want to hear no from this person, but it actually can bring stronger outcomes when you get all the pieces on the table first and really find out what are the deal breaker. I'd say for collaboration from a practical takeaway, I'd say what are the deal breakers in a situation and what are the things you're willing to work with, So for example, if it's like a deal breaker is, okay, a deal breaker would obviously be we have to put some kind of de-icer down. We can't just not de-ice. That's a deal breaker. But a work with is kind of like you said, hey, we can experiment with less salt in different places. We can look at brine. We can look at different things. That's a collaboration sense. So just kind of wanted to get your reaction on that from, both your perspectives.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of different areas you can try this in, and it's not an all or nothing deal as well. If you're, I mean, I'm going to pick a number. If you're 80% inefficient, only changing 10% is still worth it to get you to 70%. And it's a step, just like anything. To try and go all in all at once is doable, but difficult. Things seem to work for us, especially when we did it. They worked really well in stages, and not just to try it in this area and then start trying it in more areas. But snow equipment costs money, and if you're going to get rid of what you had and start using something new, that all costs more money. So there's certain things you can do that don't really cost anything. Like if you're normally running through your salt through your hopper, you can start ordering treated salt. The treated salt price is slightly expensive, but you can use 30% less salt. So you can still bill your customer the same thing. So, on what takes zero effort, it takes zero effort to tell your salt vendor, send me the treated salt instead of send me the regular salt. Your guys do the exact same thing. The hardest part of the whole operation is just convincing your guys to turn their setting down and put about 30% less down. But there's all these intangibles that come with that then that we didn't realize. So now our trucks, when we started doing that, that was our first step that we did. And our trucks then could all of a sudden treat 30% more parking lots before they had to come back to refill. And then put meters on our salt meters so we could actually tell how many pounds we're putting down, so that we could have metrics. We could measure our lots. We could know high, low, medium, how much we should be putting down. From there, we ended up putting pre-wet systems on our trucks so that they're spraying the salt as it comes down, as it's coming out of the hopper. But this is over the course of several years. It was like, this is what we're going to do this year. This is what we're going to do next year. Early on, we went from straight edge plows to active edge plows. So they're 2-foot sections, reducing the amount of snow that's on the pavement after you plow that you have to melt off. That's huge. That doesn't even have to do with the salt. That just has to do with getting a better scrape. So there's a lot of these things that really kept getting us further and further. We kept finding all these intangibles, all the way down to we use smaller trucks now because we truly did get it to. We used to put down what was, I would say, the industry standard, 600 to 800 pounds per acre. I know people that do 1,000 plus. There's all kinds of science that shows you can do it at anywhere from 1 to 150 pounds on the light end to 300 pounds on the high end. And so we are always within those now, within those parameters. We have the same results as all the other contractors in town. The difference is, if I buy 5,000 tons of salt, which is about what we buy per year, 5,000 tons of salt, without these practices, that would have been 10,000 pounds of salt. That's a $400,000 swing. I mean, these are big numbers. If you only use if you usually use 1,000 tons, so small, 1,000 tons, you're able to cut it down to 500. That's a $40,000 swing. That's a lot of money freed up to start buying new equipment that will do these things. We didn't need the large trucks anymore. We started just running smaller 1 ton, 3/4 ton trucks, F600s, because we could salt twice as many places before we had to come back to reload again. So there's all these intangibles that we didn't see. We're still billing the same amount for assalting, even though it's only taking half as much to get it done because we're scraping better. We're getting it down faster, and at the right times and the right temperatures and using the right product. Like step by step and incrementally, this can all happen. Look at it. I'd encourage someone to look at it as like a 5-year plan not just a 1-year plan. Like, what can I start doing this week? Number one is turn your knob down on your auger a little bit and just do some experimenting. I think I got a little sidetracked there. So.
No, I think that was really good though. And I think that, hopefully people listening, definitely if you're looking for tangible, if you're on this part of the podcast, like I'd encourage a rewind if you're looking for tangible tips to, reduce your salt usage, your de-icer usage. You threw out a lot there, but I think the main takeaway I would say from that is experimentation over time. I've heard it said experimentation is the cure for uncertainty. Testing's the cure for uncertainty. So if you're able to test little things here or there, like you said, in the back area where maybe not too many people park, or they just have a few large vehicles kind of stored that they don't really take out that often. Sure, let's start there with turning the hopper down, and let's go back out and measure and see if the melt is tangibly different from what we had in the front. And if it's not, it's like, okay, you know what, this melted nearly the same. We actually don't have as much residue salt like the white marbles that you talked about sitting here that we do out front. We're actually wasting a little bit out here. So I think we're okay. Or if you're not, then you at least know, hey, okay, we do need, or maybe don't turn it down as much, maybe look at other de-icers. But I think definitely the takeaway is that, testing over time is good. And then also one thing, this is more from a people side, but I think it's important with stuff like this, is you have to remember, I do the DISC personality profile in my work. And, if you're familiar with it, this will hit. If not, definitely go look it out. But regardless, one thing I always tell people from that is the studies show from everyone who's taken this across industries, the world, about 70% of the population has some sort of what they call S personality in them, which means steady, stable. And part of that is change resistant and doesn't like status quo. So what that means for you or anybody, a business, sales, advocacy, is when you put something new out, 7 out of 10 people are going to have some sort of resistance to it, just naturally. So knowing that, you're automatically going to have to think about some kind of change management to, all right, how do I pull people along? How do I get their input, on this to say, hey guys, this is coming down the pike. They're talking about, Wisconsin salt wise, how do we reduce chlorides? There's a need to, where do you guys think we can get more efficient? So just thinking about that change management side too, I think is really important, because, and that goes not just to de-icing, that goes to anything you do in the organization, whether you bring in new equipment, you bring in new processes, you're going after a new type of client, Allison, you're running a new type of program, like there's that change resistance. It's always going to be there. So it's, what is your kind of change resistance plan, so to speak?
Allison, it sounds like it does apply a lot to what you're doing with legislation and, working on those 7 out of 10 people to try and get some legislation change for us. I hope you can inform us on that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we jump into that, Evan?
Yeah, let's jump in. We'll jump into, really how can snow fighters support legislation, and then how can, we overcome that change resistance when it comes to legislation.
So, I mean, and I would put out there, I did become a lobbyist to work on limited liability for contractors in Wisconsin. But prior to that, I do not have a political science background. I used to be a high school science teacher. And I like to talk to folks. I've heard from a lot of contractors that this is something that we need to tackle, and said, all right, let's do it. I hosted an event, and we invited legislators to come to it. It was an equipment open house. So it was legislative aides pretty much that came and learned a ton. Like, we really opened their eyes to the world of winter maintenance and a lot of the changes that are happening. I don't think the average person doesn't realize what goes into snow and ice control, right? I mean, we see plows, we see salt, but when you start talking about calibration and dialing in those rates based on pavement temperature, measuring pavement temperature. Aron talked about, a treated salt, right? It's like, what are those additives that we use? When do we use them? So having people recognize more of the complexity of what goes into snow and ice control when it's really done well, and respecting the people that are doing that work, right? And we got one of the legislative aides to say like, yeah, how can I help you guys? Like, let me know if you need anything. And I was there. I'm like, yes, we've got something we could use your support on. So um, I would say that it really starts with that conversation. Like you need to go out or bring a bunch of contractors together, right? And go to meet with your state legislators, whether it be the representative, state senator, um, give them a call, send them an email, whatever is most comfortable to you, and to talk with them. It might be just their aides, but that's your kind of foot in the door, right? Like they do not know your world. So I literally have had conversations with legislators, legislative aides, even ones that are lawyers, and they've told me that there's no need for liability legislation because contractors are only getting sued if they do something wrong. And so if we had liability legislation, it's only protecting negligent contractors. And it's like, how off target can you be, right? Like contractors, I mean, have a huge target on their back, right? It's so easy right now. We know that the trial lawyers have the money, they've got the power, they've got the connection. So we're kind of coming in, there is the underdog. But you need to start. You need to start somewhere and having that conversation, being, honest and open with the those legislators, legislative aides about your world. And I know Aron helped out a ton this last session. We kind of pivoted from liability legislation. We were working on trying to get some grant programs going to support equipment purchases. And we actually got a bill drafted because Aron and then also someone from a municipality, someone from the public sector, reached out to their legislative aid. So I had someone from the public side, someone from the private side, both tell their state representative, this is important, this matters, and his office drafted some legislation. We didn't end up getting it passed, but I think that, yeah, especially the state representatives, they have much smaller districts. They have a little bit more time and hopefully, care to listen to you. And there is that opportunity. And I think a lot of people feel maybe uncomfortable. I mean, I definitely felt myself a bit intimidated the first time going to the Capitol, walking into these offices and saying, hey, I'd like to make a meeting. I'd like to see somebody. I'd like to talk to somebody. But, they are just people. And at the end of the day, it's their job to listen to you, right? And if we have a broken system, which we do, right, with respect to this, like it's their job to listen and to understand and to try to work on that, right? And it doesn't happen overnight, but it's not happening at all if they don't know.
Yeah, I really like that. First of all, love the passion that you have for it, and I want to encourage, pardon that gains encouragement. So I really want to encourage you just to keep that passion, kind of even bottle this moment and bottle the wins, that you have along the way for the tough days, because passion for it is needed, because you're going to run into contractors that like Aron said, have been sued over BS, or some like dime sized piece of ice 5 days after the storm where they did everything right, and insurance companies still saying, well, we want to settle this because we don't want the hassle of it. So you're going to deal with people that might be burnt out on this. I know I was talking to somebody, they were saying about, we were talking about this before we went on air, that sometimes legislation can take, lobbying can take 10 years to pass legislation. So it's not something that's a walk in the door, have a conversation. And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. Let me write that, and we'll put that in the law tomorrow. We wish, but it is a long road. So I encourage you definitely, continue to hold that passion and keep going strong. And I think one thing I even took away from what you said, definitely on the lobbying side, but can also apply to anything, is it starts with the conversation, so it starts with putting yourself in the world, saying, you're putting your perspective on the table of what you want to represent, and also being open to listen and hearing their perspective, and hearing, what can and can't happen, what things that they have to deal with, all those kind of things. You know, so I think those are all important for sure. Starting with the conversation, and kind of back to what I said about personality is like, those who are the more, if you're familiar with DISC, the DI, the, drivers, the fast paced personalities, which I am, an outgoing I personality. So I am kind of fast paced. I, a lot of times come to the table with an idea and want people to like buy into it right away. So for me, even having the first conversation sometimes is tough because, I need to slow down a little bit, but I think that's good advice is just come have the conversation. Don't look to blast through change or get things there. Like just build the relationship. What would you guys, as being part of this, kind of say to that?
I would definitely agree. Sorry, I don't know all the different personality analogies. The rest of my family does because they're always telling me I'm this or that with these initials. And I'm like compare me to someone on a show that is, and that's a little easier. But I with what Allison was saying there, I found this was my first venture into anything political and legislative. And I thought there's some really interesting similarities between what Allison is doing on the legislative end and what we're trying to do out in the field. Like she's really trying to play the long game. Like this, as we've seen, isn't going to be a legislation gets drafted up, everybody's on board and loves it, and this year it passes. Similar to our goal of reducing salt, we decided we wanted to reduce our salt usage by 50% over several years. And so it was a little, we'll try this, we'll try that. Oh, that didn't work. But then the important step, why didn't that work? And what should we do different? One of the really interesting things to me that I didn't see coming with the legislation on Allison's end is the first year when Governor Evers, correct me, Allison, if I'm using the wrong terms, but when he vetoed the proposed bill, it was a surprise to me that it wasn't just a no, because I always just assumed it's a stamp no, move to the next pile. It was a stamp no, and then about a half-page write-up of why he was saying no. So it gave a target of what to address. So you didn't have to just blindly guess at why is this not. It was, I remember I think there was a funding issue of where will the funding from this come from. There's a issue of making sure that negligence isn't overlooked here. And it was also really telling to me that the biggest resistance to it came from the State Trial Lawyers Association. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we get sued for stuff or threats of lawsuits for stuff that we're not even contracted to cover, just in the hopes that people are going to settle. And that's usually more than once we've been included in a lawsuit for a slip and fall that happened on a sidewalk that we're not even contracted to do, with the hopes that 5 different people's insurance companies together will all each settle for 20 grand because it's easier than going to court. And then that lawyer pulls in $100,000. So that's a big hurdle to overcome there. But on the application press side, there's also big hurdles to overcome. The person who thinks that there needs to be all that salt visible for safety, because if they have to see salt, well, then that takes brine out of the equation. Like we have customers where I've said, let me service this for free for you a couple times with brine so you can see the difference. And so, we have to learn our customers and employees' pain points in order to implement a lot of this. And Allison on the legislation end has been learning everybody's pain points so that she knows, or collectively, where to steer everybody in regards to moving forward as well. So I thought that was kind of an interesting how they both are quite similar.
Yeah, I like that. I love the collaboration, just the similarities between both of your works, what you do, and that you're really working toward that win-win goals. Definitely, Aaron, as we kind of get to wrapping up here, I know we've talked different ways about like, how contractors can reduce. And I think from a tangible takeaway side, I definitely heard number one is be open to learning. So go to things like, the Wisconsin Saltwise events, SIMA, storm equipment, Storks, whatever it is regionally or nationally for you as a company, and go there. One thing I encourage as a trainer is go there to learn. I know it's fun to connect. It's good to connect. Connection is absolutely valuable. You should connect. You should be intentional about connecting. You should have a good time while you're there. You've worked hard. You do want to enjoy the fellowship and the time there, but also do go to learn. And you don't necessarily have to go with like a laundry list of everything, but kind of pick those 2 or 3 things that like, hey, here's what I want to pick someone's brain about. So if you are somebody that wants to reduce chloride use and say like, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to ask people like, hey, I'm looking to reduce salt usage, or I'm looking to go liquid this year. Who here has done it? Have you done it? What's worked? And see if you can have those conversations both at the event and afterwards. And then, like you said, I think the experimentation is really important too. So I think the going, learning intentionally, and learning intentionally consistently. I will say, and this is not a bash, this is just kind of a caution. I don't even want to say a caution because that even sounds bad, but just perspective from a learning side. One challenge I think events can bring us is events can be knowledge dumps, and adults don't always learn best by knowledge dumps. We learn consistently in small bits over time applied to work. So we almost learn better, Aaron, by what you were saying you do of, all right, let me research something, let's look into this, let's make the small change. So let's apply it to the job. And then let's see what worked and analyze if it did or didn't, and then go back, another thing we're going to learn and then apply. So like that small learn, apply almost works better for adults to learn than like just big knowledge dump, if that makes sense.
I think
their brains are sponges, but yeah, they have limited attention span. I was just going to say, while I've got the floor here, one other thing that I would promote, what self-promotion is our webinars. So all of the Wisconsin Saltwise webinars are live streamed on YouTube, and then they're available on our YouTube channel. So Aaron has done a couple in the past. We've got other contractors as well as folks, from the public side, and you can go and get those little nuggets, right? And just listen to a half-hour webinar or even like 5 minutes of the webinar and get that takeaway, right? And let someone else have kind of be the first person to go through the learning curve and hit the hurdles and to gain as much from them, rather than having to kind of go through it the hard way yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely make sure you send that afterwards, the link to your YouTube, because I can include that in like all the notes and promo stuff I send out, because I do a promo blast, which Aaron knows is get someone who gets them. So that will definitely include that in there as a resource.
Yeah, I was going to mention to you about the learning you just said. On a whole, people do learn the way you were saying, but on a whole, the snow industry is not a equal share of the pie of all different learners, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to speak a little outside of my expertise, just out of my observation. Allison, being a former teacher, probably knows more of this, but our school systems were not, I'm not going to get political about this at all. Our school systems are not built for young men who are attention deficit, who like to work with their hands, who cannot sit at a table for 3 hours straight. And therefore, the snow industry is not filled. Hear me out on this. The snow industry is not filled with valedictorians and 4.0 students. It's filled with incredibly talented and intellectual and often very engineering-minded people, but it's not necessarily filled with the people who are wired to get straight A's. Still incredibly talented and in some ways smarter than some of the straight A students. But then oftentimes our events we go to are geared just like, or set up just like school was. I do awful in that setting. Like even the best presentations, days of presentations, honestly, I probably get about 10%, maybe 20% out of what people are saying. But then afterwards, like the question and answer part, I get tons out of that. Or at lunchtime or a break, I heard someone mention something in the audience, and I go talk to the other audience member. Hey, I heard you guys are doing this. Can you tell me? Can you show me a picture? I do great with pictures. So there's, even with Saltwise here, I'm seeing all kinds of different ways that people need to be approached, because certain, like even the salt reduction, if I was to give someone a 4-page or a 20-page binder of all the science behind it and how to do it, that's probably gonna there's some people that would learn from that well, but the majority of the people in the snow industry would not. They're going to need to be shown. They want to see the equipment. They want to get their hands on it. They want to see a photo of a before and after. I don't want to see the science. I'm not going to understand the eutectic temperatures of everything. I want to see half a parking lot salted this way, half a parking lot salted that way, and what it looked like 3 hours later. I don't want. I'm not going to be able to follow through the science. There's people total opposite of that too, that are incredibly technical minded and whatnot too. But I see us getting further with both this program and all kinds of things in the snow industry when we can be a little more hands-on and a little outside of the typical schooling model that we all grew up with.
Yeah. No, that's, and I'll tell you what, that's a whole, I think you and I want to talk to you offline about that, because as a trainer, I'm always looking for ways to get better, you know what I mean? And I try not to be in the traditional schooling model, though I certainly can and do offer things like that. But, you're definitely having my brain going as far as, okay, if I'm offering a seminar at a SIMA, or if I'm offering a virtual course, like, how can I tweak that to make it different with, maybe like you said, do I shorten the teachings? Do I be like, all right, here, y'all go work group this for, 10 minutes, and then we come back and discuss, you know what I mean? So this is good. I think, again, back to collaboration.
For the record, Allison does a great job of not making us sit through 2 hours of the science behind anything. As any good teacher would do, she makes sure that we get enough of it, that we know where it's coming from. But I imagine your science classes in school, you did an amazing job dealing with the kids, Allison.
Well, thank you, Aaron. Yeah. And I came into education through environmental ed, where we weren't sitting down, like we were outside in the forest, hiking, taking a look at the tree, right? Like measuring the water chemistry. And I think that, for me, the most fun event, I shouldn't use the word fun, but like I feel like the event that like really gets people excited, engaged, are our equipment open houses, where we do have a little bit of sit down and we do introductions, and I give people some content, some kind of base content, but then I break people up into small groups, and I work hard, even though Evan had brought this up, that kind of resistance to change piece, right? Sometimes there's also resistance to meeting new people. You come to an event and you want to hang out with the people that you know, even though they're not the ones you're going to learn the most from, right? You got to go outside of your comfort zone, which sounds like Aaron, you're a little more wired to do that, right? Like you want to go have the conversation with that person who asked the interesting question, but it's not everybody. So I do what I can to to make people meet some new faces, hear some new voices, new experiences, and then go around in those small groups and take a look at equipment. So those events are really great, and I feel like whenever we have one of those, there's just a lot of energy, a lot of buzz for trying things. Yeah.
Definitely. So as we close up here, kind of any final, words of wisdom from y'all, or even just where we can find you, if people are looking to connect with you more.
Say, we've got the Wisconsin Saltwise website, wisaltwise.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and then I'd say the YouTube channel is really this like huge treasure trove of webinars for folks to dive into and find, learn from others. It's mostly people in Wisconsin, but not not solely. And yeah, if there's somebody else who, if you watch, you know, a webinar and you're like, hey, I'd like to present and share my story, happy to do that too. So I'd say all those things. And then people can also email me, wisaltwise@gmail.com.
Awesome.
Allison, is there a need you would have from other snow contractors for involvement with Wisconsin Saltwise, and what can the rest of us in the snow industry do to support what you're doing both in and out of Wisconsin?
I like it.
Boy, outside of Wisconsin, I'm trying to think of like kind of beyond beyond what I mentioned earlier, potentially like getting on our newsletter. And then when I have like action alerts, that would be a way to kind of be in touch for that. I am focused mostly in Wisconsin, because that's where, you know, my funding comes at the end of the day. But yeah, I've learned a lot from other folks, and happy to support people. I do think SIMA right now, as far as legislation efforts, they do have a working group that I know I attended one of their meetings. So if you're wanting to get involved in that, I would probably direct you to SIMA, but I'm also happy to be a contact and share what we learned in Wisconsin.
Awesome. And then Aron, just where we find you and any kind of closing words of wisdom for, you know, people listening.
Yeah. Well, closing wisdom, I'd say, no pun intended, but take anything I said here with a grain of salt, you know, and, you know, it experiment, you know, but where to find me? If you're going to be in the West Bend, Wisconsin area, swing on by, stop at our shop. We'll grab some lunch. We'll talk a little bit. Otherwise, you could reach out to Evan and he can forward you my email address. I'll get you a phone number. Always open to a talk, a discussion on how did you do this, or if you're doing something cool that you think I should be aware of, let me know. I'd love to do that. We've got some YouTube and Facebook and Instagram stuff online. It's Extra Mile Snow Plowing. Just look up different variations of that. You'll see some of us on there. And then a couple of the webinars Allison had spoke with on the Saltwise on the YouTube channel. There's a couple, like if you wanted to actually have a more in-depth understanding of the things I shared, I think there's at least two webinars, hour-long webinars with me discussing that on there. One of them is specifically geared towards municipalities also.
Perfect. Well, thank you both for your time. This has been Net Gain, networking, encouragement, and training with Jack of all people trades, helping y'all find, train, and keep the best people for your snow, landscape, and small businesses. Thank you for listening. We out. Weather, but you ain't gonna slip and fall with that. Why? Because we snow fighters, we assaulting that. Get it, salting that. King me the salting rap. Clown brokers, end of the road. This a cul-de-sac. Blackout with white glove service. That's the coldest facts. Sparks flying from the start. It's a Goldberg match. Wild with the snow clouds running. We be on a mission. How we